That's Connecticut's Secretary of State saying she is not handing over voter information to a new commission run by Vice President Pence. Connecticut, plus 24 other states and Washington, D.C. are refusing the request for all kinds of information, including voting history. Over the weekend, President Trump tweeted, numerous states are refusing to give information to the very distinguished voter fraud panel. What are they trying to hide? Well, a privacy group now taking it to court, filing an emergency request that the commission be stopped from demanding the voter data. Here to talk about it, our legal panel today. Bob Bianchi is a criminal defense attorney. He is also a former head county prosecutor. Also, Richard St. Paul, a former prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney. So, when we think of government, Bob, we think our government wants to do good things, right? So why are state governments in so many cases refusing or at least rebuffing this request from the federal government?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, if you look at it from at least a Democratic point of view, there are privacy concerns and voter intimidation issues. That's what they would say. On the Republican side, we believe that states have rights and the federal government should not be coming into what is traditionally a states' right issue and demanding data that could present all sorts of security concerns. And those secretaries of state each have to be concerned, as that lady said in that clip that you had from Connecticut, that if they produce this data without a court saying to do it, they themselves can be held liable for releasing that private information in lawsuits filed against them. So this needs to be cleared up by the court because some of the data being asked for, like Social Security, partial Social Security numbers, places where people live, the ability to hack that data, bad guys can use that data for bad things, is very problematic. And if it were me, unless I had a court order, I wouldn't do it.
Do the states have a point? I mean, do they have an argument about at least rebuffing these requests?
Well, they have an argument in terms of a technical argument in terms of the format. Voter data is available. The RNC, Republican National Committee, the DNC, Democratic National Committee, has voter data on all Americans who vote in elections. This information is public information, and what it typically entails that you can get in a FOIA request, I can get, anybody can get, is the name, the address, the date of birth of the individual. So all you have to do is FOIL it. The commission sent a letter. If they were to FOIL the information, they would get the information because it is available publicly.
Interesting, and we have on screen right now a map of the states that have so far rebuffed these requests, and they run the gamut from the very liberal Oregons and California to Iowa and some of the states in the deep south.
Democrats and Republican states.
And John, here's the point that with a little bit of a disagreement there, I think the courts are going to say potentially, or certainly will be argued, if you can get this data from some other place that's publicly available, then get it, but don't ask state officials to release private data. That's the difference here. If you can amass it and there's a less intrusive way to do it, then you should go ahead and go out and find those public records. But some of that data, Richard, with all due respect, isn't there, like Social Security numbers, military status, things of that nature.
But the basic information, for example, I can determine whether Jane Doe in Iowa is also the same Jane Doe that's voting in Missouri. That shouldn't happen. So there's some information you can get. And not every state has a Secretary of State. For example, New York State has a Board of Elections person. Not the Secretary of State of New York does not control election data. So it's just a matter of reformatting that information and sending it out to the proper public officials, but the information is publicly available.
Here is where some of these concerns may have started in the Trump administration. In late November, after he had won the election, he tweeted this: in addition to winning the Electoral College in a landslide, I won the popular vote if you deduct the millions of people who voted illegally. Bob, is there evidence of that?
No, there's no evidence of that. It's a completely unsubstantiated claim. But clearly, nobody wants voter fraud. But this has been something that's been left to the province of the states and their state courts to resolve with respect to voter fraud. The federal government now getting itself involved without any evidence at all. And one of the biggest problems that I think, with all due respect, the administration has is before you go out and launch these policies, like the first travel ban order, you should bring the people around the table who are going to be affected, get buy-in from them, explain the context for it, and maybe these things wouldn't be happening in the way that they are.
All right. Richard, I'm sorry, I'd love to get you in, but we're running out of time. Appreciate it. Richard, Bob, thanks very much.
Thanks, sir.